I would now like to call the February 26, 2021 Longmont Housing Authority Board of Commissioners special meeting to order. Could we please start with the roll call?
Absolutely. Chairperson Bagley.
Here.
Commissioner Christensen.
Here.
Commissioner Hidalgo Faring.
Here.
Commissioner Martin.
Here.
Commissioner Peck. I see her. She's there. Commissioner Rodriguez.
Here.
Commissioner Waters.
Here.
Chairman Bagley, you are ready to roll. You have a quorum.
All right, cool. Do we need to take roll call? Can't we just look and say we hereby observe and all realize and recognize that we're all here?
I think we need to take audible roll call for the record. Yes.
All right, just curious. All right, just a quick reminder, anyone wishing to provide public comment during the public invited to be heard must watch the live stream of the meeting and call in only when it becomes open. You'll dial that toll-free number, you'll enter the meeting ID, and then you'll press pound and you'll be called on according to the last 3 digits of your phone number. It's not time to call in yet, only call in after the chair indicates. And I guess today I would be the chair. Okay, we don't need agenda revisions or submission of documents, but we do need to approve. Hold on a second here. Do we need to approve the minutes of January 5th? I was not there. Was somebody there?
Mayor, if I may explain, these are the minutes, January 5th. That was at the council meeting. You adjourned as the council and convened as the LHA.
Okay.
So you need to complete your own record as the commissioners.
Cool. All right. Do I have a motion? I'll take the
So moved.
All right. Councilmember Christensen has moved it, and Councilmember Martin, upon drinking her drink, has seconded it. Hi, Marcia. All right. So all in favor of approving the January 5th, 2021 minutes, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right. The motion carries unanimously. Let's go ahead and take a 2 to 3 minute break for public invited to be heard. Be back in 3.
Harold, do we have a resident on this meeting?
Well, unless someone calls in, no, that you have a resident on the advisory board, and that's Jean Christopher, who's the resident, and Tom DeBee is on the advisory board. Cameron couldn't be here, so Tom can, if you have any input on that from the residents, he can talk about what we've heard or what Jean has brought forward. And then Polly's in those our Commissioner Christensen is in those meetings as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hey, Harold, while we're at it, while we're on break, when's the day, when's Costco set to open its doors? Do you know?
I don't know. They're still going through the development review process. So Joni, they're still moving the construction schedule. So I don't know.
All right. There's a Facebook thread that people were asking. So I was just asking.
Joni?
I do not know that date either, but I can look and see. I know they just.
Don't worry about it. It's not. I just, if you knew, you knew. If not, moving construction schedule. As soon as I heard that, I get it. Don't worry about it.
Well, they're going through the land use piece.
Mm-hmm.
Harold, don't I recall that if it closed on time in July this summer, and we had good weather and there weren't any other delays, it was as early as Christmas time 2023 or December 2023, and as late as December 2024. Wasn't that the
Right.
time frame?
Somewhere, but I think I've also heard they're trying to pull in time-wise. So
Like go faster?
yeah, but let us check.
Chair, I'm going to go ahead and drop the slide and then wait for our live stream to get caught up.
All right. Do we have anybody in the queue?
There we go. We just got caught up. No, we do not. You may
All right.
continue.
Perfect. Thank you very much. All right, let's go on to the new and old business. Let's go ahead and do the overview of the role of council as the LHA Board Commissioner or the Longmont Housing Authority Board of Commissioners. Harold, do you want to explain that to us? Or is it
Yeah.
Eugene?
No, it's actually Karen that's going to do this.
Okay, Karen.
But before we do that, Chairperson Bagley, I want to take the opportunity to introduce you to members of our Housing Authority team that are online today with us. You probably have not engaged with them to this point. So I just saw Lisa Gallinar pop on the screen. Lisa is our regional property manager. And I will let Lisa introduce herself and give you a brief overview of her background.
Good afternoon. Yes, I'm Lisa, new regional manager. I've been in property management for 16 years, including development, affordable housing management, worked with probably 7 to 10 different affordable housing programs over the last 16 years of my career. Recently moved to Colorado. We love it here. And I'm actually really excited to be part of this organization.
Next, we have Kendra Daniels. Kendra's actually been part of our city organization for a while. Kendra was doing a lot of work on the CDBG-DR work as part of flood recovery. During that time, Lisa, as we began this transition, Kendra jumped in and really took over a lot of the financial work alongside our accounting staff of Deanne Hansen and Susie McGinley, and then obviously Jim Golden in this realm. But Kendra just, we opened the job of senior accountant, and Kendra was the one that we selected for that position. Kendra, do you want to add anything?
So I'm the accounting supervisor.
Yeah, are you?
Oh, no, that's okay. So yes, I took that role January 25th, and I am learning lots, which is a lot of fun. Because I've been doing DR work for a really long time, and that was coming to a halt. So I'm actually really looking forward to assisting the Housing Authority and getting them to a place where they can succeed and thrive.
Then we have Olivia DeVere. Is that how it's?
Yeah, DeVere.
DeVere.
Yeah.
And so Olivia, I don't remember exactly what your title is. I know we've changed it. Olivia.
Administrative coordinator.
Administrative coordinator. Olivia is one of the individuals that was working with the Housing Authority prior to us actually coming in and becoming involved in the process. Olivia, along with Andy and everyone else, has really done a good job getting us up to speed, and has really helped us keep our lives together in many ways and chase down things. And so we really appreciate it. Olivia, do you want to talk a little bit about yourself?
Oh, I'll just say, in the time that I've been with the Housing Authority, about a year now, I've learned a lot, and I've really been in the thick of kind of seeing things turn around. And it's been such a pleasure to do this work.
Thank you, Olivia. Thanks, Chairperson, for allowing us. I don't see anyone else from the Housing Authority that's logged on right now. If there is, send me a chat and we'll catch you at the end. I'm assuming I'm seeing this, but thanks for allowing us to do that. We also have Tom DeBee on with us today. Tom is the vice chair. And Cameron's not able to join us, and we want Tom here to kind of help bridge the gap as we move forward and provide any input from the advisory board to you all.
Although I want to point out that we're now the LHA board. You keep referring to titles and asking if that's what they want to be called. We could change them to anything. I like Commander to be, or Princess Galbanar, or we could just change them and have fun with the whole thing.
Exactly.
You know?
Tom, do you want to?
You're like, shut up, Bagley. Okay, go ahead. Guess nobody likes my jokes at this time in the morning. That's fine.
Just been on the. I was a board commissioner, and now. For about a year, and then now we're the advisory board, and just got elected to be vice chair. That's really all I have to say.
Yeah, and I want to say a big thanks to the folks that have been involved in this process. So it was it's still Commissioner Waters, but he was serving on there as a council member, and Councilmember Christensen, Roland liaison, and Tom and the other board, as we've really gone through the last 6 to 7 months through this transition. They have been there with us as we've been moving through this and having any number of special meetings. So I did want to pass along that to the current commissioners and also to Tom, and that we really appreciate the work you've been doing with this. So thank you.
Yeah, it's been great. All the change, and then we appreciate the city council for stepping up and taking on the role of the housing authority now.
Karen, item A.
Okay, great. So just wanted to take a couple of minutes and just talk a little bit about, what you have taken on. So you want to become the board of the Longmont Housing Authority and what that really means. So Olivia has ordered a primer for all of the council members. There it is. Harold is holding that. Oh, you got it. Yay. So we're not going to have a book report or anything like that, but what we really would encourage you at your earliest convenience to read through the information that is in that book. I think it gives a great overview of really what your role is as the Board of Commissioners for the Longmont Housing Authority, and the book really talks about some of the 5 or 6 main areas that the commissioners really have responsibility, for, and that's really about understanding the mission and the purpose and the programs and the financials. Just really kind of the overview of the Longmont Housing Authority, and to be familiar with the agency's policies and procedures. And there are a lot of them. I think it's we've all learned a lot. It's a pretty complicated operation at the Housing Authority, between the voucher program, managing our developments, staying in compliance with all of the HUD regs, with the financing agency regs. There's just a lot to pay attention to. So we'll spend some time trying to provide an overview of what some of those major policy issues and procedures are. I think the other thing is really to understand all of the different developments that the agency, that the LHA owns and operates, and the properties. There's a section in there that really talks about what it means in terms of open meetings and those kinds of things. And you all have that down. So we're not going to go into how to operate that way, because you know that you've been operating that for years. And then being familiar with some of the major federal and state laws and regulations that really dictate the work that we have to do. So and the other thing we're going to spend quite a bit of time doing is really outlining some of the finances, the financial monitoring. And one of the things that you'll see it says in the book is that really doing good management as a board of commissioners is certainly really focusing on financial information and sharing that and understanding the finances of the organization. And so we are, and Harold and Kendra have been spending an enormous amount of time trying to figure out the finances of the Longmont Housing Authority and really getting that financial information, back on track. That was one of the challenges I think that we had. And we certainly have understood that is really key for us to do great agency management work, is to really have an incredibly good handle on our finances, as well as following all of our rules and regulations. So what we envision, I think Carol will talk about this at the end of the meeting, is that for a little while, maybe 2, 3, we don't know how long, but not too many, but we felt it was important to have some dedicated meetings of the Board of Commissioners of the Housing Authority to really help with getting establish some of that grounding, particularly around some of the important areas around the policies, the property management, and agency finances, just to help you in your role of helping us to monitor what our performance is and how we continue to move forward as a housing authority. So we envision that there probably would be 2 or 3 more of these dedicated meetings. And then beyond that, what we would hope would then to be incorporate some of the regular business of the Longmont Housing Authority Board of Commissioners into your regular business as City Council, and and do like you have with the general improvement district, where you where in the general business part of the meeting that you convene as the Board of Commissioners for the Housing Authority and take care of some of the main business that we would have to deal with. And we would hope that might happen on a monthly basis. Again, we will get a better handle on that in the weeks to come. But we want to schedule that at a time where we can bring back any issues or recommendations from the advisory board, the Longmont Housing Authority Advisory Board, as well as provide the opportunity for the Board of Commissioners to provide any direction that you might want the LHA Advisory Board to take on. So we'll figure all that out, but do read your primer when you have a chance, and we will obviously bring forward some documents and some information that we think would be really important to help you be successful as a commissioners. And I don't know if Kathy or Harold have any other comments.
I do real quick. I see Marcia has a question as well. I am putting an item on the March 30th agenda, just FYI, that is a adoption of our 5-year plan. So I'm getting that ready. So you will be having one integrated within your March 30th meeting. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up is that Olivia has found some trainings, online trainings and stuff like that as well. We're in the process of vetting those. And as soon as we have those ready, we'll share those as well.
Marcia, I'm sorry, Commissioner Martin.
I just wanted to know, is this handbook coming to us in the mail, or do we need to pick it up somewhere?
I don't know how you all are getting the mail that comes into the office, but it will be with the mail that you get from our office.
Okay.
Perfect. So mine will be on my desk, I hope. All right, great. And then just on behalf of council, we're all aware of how much you guys are working and what this all means. So as much as I don't want to be here at 2 o'clock taking on extra work, it's nothing compared to what you guys have had to deal with. So thank you, Karen, Kathy, Harold, and all the other faces that are currently not being shown on my screen. All right, let's move on to the update on transition planning, specifically the structure, the budget, the staffing, which is needed. And we'll need a motion to direct staff to convert the LHA staff members to employees of the city of Longmont at some point. But let's go ahead and start with that update.
So commissioners, hold on a second. I've got to enlarge you all on this screen because I'm sharing my screen. Do you all see the screen which says 2021 budget overview? Okay, great. I've got to do a couple of things. There we go. So one of the things that we wanted to do is talk to you about the budget for the Housing Authority and go over it at a pretty high level. Kendra's, we talked about Kendra and the work that we've done on this. Kendra's going to be available. We, depending on the questions that you all have, we have a very detailed budget worksheet that we can talk about in this. As we get ready to start through this, you will see, you know, there's some other items that are specifically talking about budget and what we've had to work through as we've been moving through the process. And so you will hear me kind of pivot off certain budget points in this conversation to talk about some of those issues, and then we'll wrap it back up as we're moving forward. One of the things that, and Karen alluded to this in her comment, that we really had to work through as we were moving through this process is to really understand and dig into revenues, expenditures, where folks were taking money to pay for certain things, because it is a different budgeting process than what you all are used to. And we had to, and we are still going through different levels of adjusting expenditures. And so as we were moving through evaluating 2019, shifting into 2020, and really the work in 2020 was really Kendra and Susie and Deanne spent a lot of time reconciling expenditures, making sure that things weren't double booked, and making sure that things were costed out appropriately. One of the examples that I can talk about is, so when you have an issue in one of the units, it's not necessarily, so if we had a flood, or let's say we had something break and we have to replace it, what we were seeing at times is some of those expenditures were being driven into the maintenance accounts. But in the properties that are in play, they have a replacement fund for some of these expenditures. So we were seeing things that could have been allocated to a replacement fund actually brought into the expenditure budget, which then, if you know, and we're not going to go over 2019, but when you looked at 2019, you would see where they were overspent, and in some cases in the negative, because those were allocated to the operating budget versus the replacement fund. So we've spent a lot of time working through those issues. And so we're going to go over the property budgets first. And this also gives you a sense of how we're structuring some of the properties. So we call it the Aspen Meadow Campus, and the Aspen Meadow Campus is Aspen Meadow Senior Apartments, and it's also the Aspen Meadow neighborhood, which is adjacent to it. And you can see in 2020, they projected a net income of $87,000, with total revenues coming in at approximately $469,000. You can see how the expenses were broken out, total expense of $381 to give you that net income. Some things that we actually had, so we went in and really fine-tuned the revenue component on this, but what you will see is you'll see some of the admin expenses adjusted, and that's salaries that came into play in this, because what we also did in this process is really look at the expenses associated with salary, and we re-benchmarked all the positions, because when we looked at the compensation approach for the Housing Authority, it was really hard for us to tell how they were establishing market rate salaries. And so we went through with all of the staff members and really took them through the same process that we do as a city that you're used to seeing as in the budget process. So that's part of it. You can see that the rest of the numbers here are fairly consistent until you get to maintenance and operations. And Kendra spent a lot of time really going back historically to understand what we are really spending in the maintenance world and what do we need to budget. So we feel more comfortable just across the board in those categories. And then you see something at the bottom called financing expenses. And those are expenses associated with the debt on each one of these properties based on how we finance it through, you know, the different programs and how we've set up the accounting on the capital side of these facilities. And then how we also account for, as we dig into it deeper, the depreciation starts coming into play and some other things. And then on Aspen Meadows neighborhood, obviously it's a smaller property, so it doesn't generate the same level of revenue that we have at the Aspen Meadows apartments. You can see the same expenses. Obviously, in terms of the net income at the end of the day, you can see that's reduced. One of the things, again, where you're really seeing some of that difference is $9,000 on maintenance and operations. And so, again, we're really trying to express what we really anticipate those expenses to be as we continue to move forward. One of the things, and we didn't show it on this slide, but one of the things that we saw in 2019 is we had a number of budgets in this list that they were actually budgeting in a deficit. And so the one thing that we're actually proud of in terms of the work that we've done for 2021 is we're not budgeting for a deficit in any one of these categories. Correct, Kendra?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the other campus that we've talked about is the Prairie Village campus. And so you have two facilities there. You have Spring Creek and Fall River. One of the things when you look at the Fall River apartments, you can see a net income of $316,000 in 2020. The big piece of that is there's revenue that spins off of when you finish the construction. So Fall River was actually completed in 2020. So that's what you're seeing in that budget amount. When you look at 2021, that's really where we're looking at what it's going to look like in terms of ongoing operations. And you can see with the net income of $61,000, Spring Creek has been open longer on the other side. And you can see at the end of the day, a net income of $52,000 and $68,000, $52,000 in 2020, $68,000 in 2021. Again, in these facilities, Spring Creek, the maintenance and operation numbers are close. And I think that's just because it's a newer property and we really are confident in that. You can see the change. There's a significant change in maintenance and operations in Fall River, and that's as we continue to move forward. Then we get into the downtown campus. And so the downtown campus is in two facilities. One is the Village Place Apartments. So for those of you that may not be familiar with it, it's a facility located across the street from the pump house. That facility, you can see the work that we did in terms of the total revenue. One of the things we also did in this process was really evaluate our revenue stream, what we needed to do in terms of potential rents, what that was going to look like. You can see a $34,000 variance in this as we continue to move forward. Again, many of the same things, although in this category, again, I'll point out maintenance and operations with a $23,000 increase. And that was really based on the experience that we were seeing in terms of what we were having to put into the property on an ongoing basis. And this is a good example of what I was talking about. So I'll talk more about it in the operational report. So one of the things that we were seeing is we had some issues at this property with people breaking in. So we started evaluating what we needed to do from a security perspective. And so we were actually able to use the contract that we bid out as a city and bring that on board. And so the capital cost on that was $27,000. What we did is actually go immediately in the replacement reserves because of the security system that was there. What could have potentially happened before is they would have just expended that to the operational line item here, which would throw it into a different world. Another example of where we saw that was we had some, I believe it was insurance repairs that were in operation and maintenance, but on the revenue side, we only had 50% of it there. And so we had to track down to go what was really happening on that insurance category. So that's a lot of the work that we had to go through into this. And so Village Place was a good area to describe it. Briarwood, that's actually the apartments that are located behind the LHA office. And so this is the budget just for the units. You will see, and as you see about when we talked about the office on another agenda item, there is a Briarwood office budget account that comes into play as well. And so this is a smaller facility, obviously a smaller revenue stream. And so when we start looking and working on the expense side of allocating the cost of some of the other services that we provide, this one's a really good one to use as an example when you look at the margins that are in play and how it becomes more difficult to start costing out some of these expenses to these agencies. And that'll start tying in a little bit to or the expenses associated with the LHA General Fund. That'll tie in when we talk about that and some of the decisions we had to make as we continue to move forward. Hover Crossing. Hover Crossing is a little bit different. And so Hover Crossing is a 202 property that is associated with HUD, Housing and Urban Development. And so when we go through on all of, let me back up a little bit, on all of these budgets, when we prepare them and present them to you all, we also have to present them to the investors in the property, and they also have to sign off on it. Hover Crossing's a little bit different because we had to submit the budget to HUD because it's a 202 property. And so one of the things that we did in Hover Crossing is when it's in the 202 world, you can actually raise the rents on those properties because HUD covers that in the process. Correct, Kendra?
Sorry, I was having some mouse issues.
Yeah.
Yes. So they hadn't really requested increases, and when they did, it were very nominal. So they weren't really covering a lot of the maintenance expenses. So we were allowed to present our budget, and then HUD approves and gives us an increase. Usually it's 5%. They actually gave us 14% this year.
And that was just because we just have historically not seen that. So when you go through that process with the 202 property, you actually have to notify the residents about a rent increase, even though they're not going to bear that increase. It's going to be associated with HUD. And so we really had to work the public information strategy on this and how we communicate with the residents in this location. They granted us a 14% increase. One of the big things that we got via this process is supportive services dollars from both of these facilities, which we haven't asked for in some time. And so we're working through right now in terms of the supportive service position, how we do that and how we blend it in to our broader structure. Because it is a property for older adults, what we're looking at is really contracting that service with our senior service division so that we can, again, take advantage of the efficiencies and the economy of scale as we're moving forward. And so then you can then see how the net income has changed from 2021 to 2020. In this case, it's actually increased because of what we were able to do with HUD. And we need to be more focused on that as we continue to move forward. One of the things that we submitted as part of an increase was actually to try to see if HUD would cover the cost of internet at this facility. And do a bulk agreement. Unfortunately, they didn't approve it, but we're going to still continue to work through this because we know that we have digital divides in our older adult populations as well. One of the things that, and I'm going to say this to get this on your radar screen, 202 properties also can be more difficult to move through compared to our more traditional properties. So we're going to go through a staff analysis on this to really determine whether or not that's where we need to be as we look to the future. So more to come on those properties as we continue to evaluate it. The Suites and Sunset Campus. So two different budgets here. The Suites obviously is the facility, and you can see that the Suites is really performing well in terms of revenue. And then you can see some adjustments in here. So We had to, in tenant services, you see a differential of 76,000. One of the things that we found out when we were reviewing the budgets, we actually had a we have a supportive service position associated with the suites, but they were actually charging that to the general fund, not the suites. So we actually moved that expense out of the general fund into the suites budget where it needed to be. And then that created some adjustments on the admin side. Again, you see the adjustment in maintenance and operations, and then the total differential is at 71,000, and that's really associated with getting the position in the appropriate budget line item. And that was creating some issues, I think, on the general fund side as we started trying to figure out what we needed to do there. The sunset land, Kathy, that's the land. What piece of land is that? I just dropped it.
That's by the suites, the land that surrounds the suites.
Okay,
it's on the Sunset
yeah.
campus. Yeah.
Yeah. And you'll see some of that conversation where it's on the when we talk about future development opportunities, and you can see that the net income on the suites is higher. Because of that net income, there were a couple of things that we were able to do in this budget process, and this is the work that the previous commissioners approved. We did actually create a bulk contract with Nextlight. So now all of the tenants at that facility have access to Nextlight, and they're not paying that charge right now. And so that's something that we're continuing to evaluate in other facilities. We're currently in the process of evaluating television service. So we have a bulk contract with Comcast. We literally just had a meeting a couple of hours ago to look and see if there's some other opportunities in that, because all in, let's say it's in the neighborhood of $32,000 to $40,000 expense. We're trying to find a way to see if we can lower that, because if we can lower it, that allows us to do more for the property and do more for the residents there. As you know, this is a fully supportive housing project, and so some differences in the suites compared to the other facilities. Mental Health Partners has a number of vouchers in this location, and so as we're filling units, that's not always specifically available to. That's not something we can just do like we do at other properties. We have to work with Mental Health Partners in filling those units. We've had a meeting with them about speeding up that process because we have some vacancies there that we need to get filled, and it does impact our revenue stream as we move forward. So we've made some fairly significant adjustments here, and we're continuing to see how we can continue to provide more services for the residents at this location. HCV, so Housing Choice Voucher Program. This is the other primary connection to HUD, and this is where we get the funding for to provide housing for individuals in for-profit, other for-profit areas, and that can be multifamily or it can be rental housing units as well. And so you see two budget amounts here. You saw 4.83 in 2020 and the same in 2021. This is really the number that goes to the community to cover those rents for the people that have housing choice vouchers. On the other side, you see the administrative cost associated with this. And the bulk of those expenses are associated with the staff that we have in managing that voucher program. And again, because of the connection to HUD, you have to be very specific in terms of how you're going to expense to this category, and you have to be providing that service to, it has to be directly associated with the Housing Choice Voucher Program. And I'll talk a little bit as we talk about structure, how that's going to come into play on this one. So left side of the chart, that's the voucher dollars. Right side of the chart is the administration of the vouchers. We are currently also going through the process to really understand what we have in terms of available vouchers. It has been a bit of a moving target. And even when we've engaged with HUD on this, at one point we thought I think when Jillian was here, we thought we had maybe 80 vouchers we weren't using. Then it went down to 20 vouchers. And so it's moved around. We're continuing to work through that right now with is it H2 Forward, Kathy?
It's AH Forward.
Yeah, right. That company, because they have experience in it. We think it'll take us about another month to really figure out, what that voucher number is going to look for us. That's also important because when we talk about future development opportunities, the vouchers will connect to that as well. LHDC. So LHDC, Longmont Housing Development Corporation, that is a separate business unit that has a separate board of directors that really focuses on the development project. So when you think of Fall River and Spring Creek and the work we went through, that was associated with LHDC. You can see in 2020 they had approximately a net income of $486,000. And then you can see that in 2021 they had a net income of 6.8 million. In this budget, we actually had to use a fund balance of 150,000 to balance it. That is because their revenue streams are really dependent on development and construction of projects. And that's what makes up their budget. Now, we know obviously we're still working on accounting to determine what that fund balance looks like, but they have a healthy fund balance at this point. If you will remember when we talked about the report that we had from Betsy Martins, one of the things that was involved in that is really the potential look at combining LHDC and LHA so we can strengthen the financial position of both organizations. That's becoming a slightly more complicated conversation right now just because of the liability issues that we've talked about. But we have a couple of folks working on that. We have Chris Gunlickson on the LHDC side, and we have Ben Doyle on the LHA side. Tim Hull's here, and he's helping us manage that to really work through the options in terms of how we move forward. If the commissioners will remember, one of the challenges that we had on the development side the corporation was the board wanted to disband. Based on that there wasn't a lot of development going on. And so that's what accelerated the review of this budget. Associated with their, what we'll call their operational budget, and you can see the administrative expense that really is, they pay a master management fee to the Housing Authority of $150,000 to manage their properties. And you'll see that come into the revenue line item on the Housing Authority General Fund. You can see the Hover land. This is another piece of land that was purchased. It's actually to the west of the Lodge in Hearthstone behind the Walgreens off of Hover. That's actually land that can be developed for additional affordable housing opportunities. We needed to actually use fund balance in this to cover it because you can see we're not generating any revenue here, but we have maintenance and operation expenses, and that's really HOA fees and mowing fees for this property. And so when we talk about development opportunities, we need to move on some of these properties for any number of reasons. But one is there's no revenue and we have expense associated with it here. Now we get into the LHA accounts. So I'm going to need Kendra to jump in here with me because I routinely mess these two items. I get these two items backwards. So we have, Kendra, the single room occupancy account and 615 Main. Can you help me go over that with this group so I don't confuse the issue?
Yeah, so the single room occupancy is similar to a voucher program that is vouchers that are given to the in-between. And it's also on a budgetary structure process with HUD as well. The in-between sends us a budget, we submit it to HUD, and then they approve the budget that is allowable for those vouchers for the 8 units that they supply for those. The 615 Main is the building next to Village Place, and it is currently has a nonprofit, the Center for Disease Control, I think. No, for disabilities.
There you go.
Disabilities.
Yeah.
Wrong one. Disabilities.
Yeah.
So they rent that space out, and that's where we get that funding from.
So on this one, So as we look at property issues, 615 Main is one that I think we're going to need to look at over time in terms of, does this need to, I think one of the questions, does this need to remain in the housing authority portfolio? Where do we see ourselves going on this? And so this is something that we're going to need more time to evaluate. Just know that it is something that I'm trying to think through right now to see if that could help bolster the overall financial position. But we also know we have a tenant in there, so we need to be cognizant of that as well. Briarwood office. This is what I was actually talking about earlier. So this is the building. This is the office space in the front of the units at Briarwood where the LHA staff sit today. And you can see that they have revenue coming in, and then you can see the expense with minimal net income on this property. A big portion of this is what LHDC and HCV pay in terms of rent for this facility. So there are expenses in other budgets that we've covered that's covering the revenue in this line item. And so when we talk about the options on the facility, this is what we talk about in terms of the impact that it'll have on some of the other budgets. And then we get into the LHA General Fund Management and Administration. And so you can see that this one has changed quite a bit as we move through this. One of the big changes, you see the 73,000 in tenant services that we reduced the budget by. That's the position that we moved to the suites. You can see that we reduced our general account and then the financing expenses. The adjustments that came into play on the admin expense side are all of the issues that were associated with the IGA that you all have voted on, and the restructuring of the positions and how we've looked at this. So when we talk about the accounting positions and the 300,000 that was in the IGA, that's part of this, although that's also pushed out into some of the other accounts as well. And the big issue that we had to get into this is really associated with structure. And when I finish going over this, I'll talk about the structural adjustments that we've made to date and what we're continuing to work on. And so this is really more akin to the city's general fund, but this is where the majority of the body set outside of HC. Well, this is where the executive director, the chief financial officer, the accounting positions, all really set. The other positions in terms of community and regional property manager, I believe in this one, the community managers, the maintenance positions, those are all attached to the facilities that they serve. And so those are embedded in those budgets. So that is a high level overview of the budget and where we stand and what it looks like for 2021. As you saw in all of those, we didn't have any deficits budgeted in this case. We're going to spend a lot of time this year really on budgetary discipline and really fine tuning and bringing all of those accounts and ensuring that we're booking those expenses. I know I went through it in a hurry. I would be happy to answer any questions you all may have on this piece.
I guess before I call on Councilmember Christensen, do we have that was great on income, but do we have a balance sheet for the entity? Like how much cash do we have on hand? What's the liabilities versus assets? Where did our money come from that we currently have? Because I know that when I hear that there was a problem with the finances, I'm glad that we figured out cash flow, but I'm just curious, is money there? Is money missing? Those are all the questions I had. And then we're going to go Councilmember Christensen and Councilmember Martin.
So let me start on that. So the audits that we had, so we're going through the audit process right now. And I think that's going to be really where we pull all of that information together. As Kendra, Deanne, and Susie have been working through this, we have seen a lot of cases where money was double booked, both on the revenue side and the expense side. And so they have really been going through and pulling that in. And we've been mindful of those questions. Is it missing? Is it double booked? Those types of issues, because they have had that occur. Kendra, can you add anything to that?
Yeah. So I don't think that we've necessarily found anything missing, but what we have found is that things are getting deposited in the wrong accounts. So as we work through each property and send these properties for audit, we are finding these anomalies that happen, and we're getting them fixed as we work through each property. And then the last piece is actually looking at LHA. We did find that revenue was overstated, and a lot of it was knowledge wasn't transferred or given from the prior CFO to let the staff know where they needed to code these transactions.
And how close are we to actually, I mean, like checkbook, savings account, accounts payable, accounts receivable? I mean, when can we get that? I just like to see I mean, like I just want to know what is the financial condition currently of the LHA. That's what I was expecting today. I mean, I see the revenues, and I see projected budgets of how much we're going to bring in and how much is going out. But as it stands right now, I'd like to know, what are our properties worth? How much money do we have on hand? Do we have enough cash to meet and pay our expenses? All that kind of stuff. And so what I'm hearing is that we don't have that answer yet because we're still doing audits.
Go ahead, Harold.
Go ahead.
So we have cash to pay. The only properties that seem to have problems, and because they are very low rent restricted, is the Hearthstone and the Lodge. Because there's only like last year, you could only get 496 period for the Lodge and 470 something for the Hearthstone. It made it really hard when they weren't doing budgetary restrictions. They were spending more than we had in cash.
Right.
So those are the two.
Right. But I guess and I think that's great. I guess I don't want an explanation. I guess I just want the sheet. If you give me the balance sheet, I'll be good. I just want to, I mean, it's great that we have cash. Here it comes in, Jim. I just want to see it. I just want to, not my brain. If I see it, I'll have all the questions answered, if that makes sense. Oh, here's Jim, Mr. Goldman.
Chair, members of the commission, I will get you an answer. I have a question right now into Deanne. I'm pretty sure we do have balance sheets.
Perfect.
Yep.
That's really my question, which is, hey, can I get a balance sheet? I don't need an explanation. I know you guys are on it. If there was a problem, you'd tell us. I just want to put eyes on it. That's it.
So I wanted to start off with a budget in this way first, so you could see all of the different components, so that then it makes sense, because it is different. Part of the challenge, and so there's some logistical issues that Jim and we've had conversations on that's associated with this. Multiple bank accounts at multiple banks, that really makes it difficult in some of these cases. And so they have really done a lot of work. So you'll see that when we have the balance sheet. But the other thing that we're looking at is really consolidating into a single bank to really help manage this overall from an operating perspective. So structurally, where we are today, as we got into this process, and we were hoping to have some org charts. I just didn't have a chance to finish those at this point because they're changing. The big thing that came into play in this one was that when we really started looking at the budgets and what we could do, my analysis on this was that what we had is we had an executive director position, and I will also, Tom and Commissioner Waters and Commissioner Christensen and other staff can jump in on this. But when we really started looking at the budgets and determining and looking at the operations and really trying to assess what we need to do and what services we need to provide and what capability we actually have to provide those services, And I think there were more questions. Sorry, let me hold there and let's go to your questions, Mayor. I think we missed that piece. Our chairperson.
Okay. All right, Councilmember Christensen.
Sort of simple questions because I know what a giant ball of yarn this is to untangle. It's amazing. And I thank you, Harold and Kendra and Olivia and Kathy and Karen and Jim and all the people who've worked on this, because I have known for quite some time what a problematic thing this was. So I am wondering if I heard right, Harold, when you talked about the Hover land and you said that there were HOA fees, did I get that right?
Correct.
But this doesn't have a building.
No,
Why is there?
The area has commercial HOA fees associated with it, and so that's associated with the way the land itself.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Yeah, that's problematic. And here's a very stupid question that I have had for years, but what is the difference between the Aspen Rivers, Aspen Meadows? There are two different designations. Are there two different buildings? Because I don't understand why that's classified as the Aspen Meadows community and the Aspen Meadows administration.
Oh, are you talking the neighborhood and the apartments?
And apartments?
That's right.
Yeah. It's two different properties.
Two different, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Two different
But
developments.
they're both called Aspen Meadows.
Yeah,
Okay.
one's apartments.
I've never
and one's
been
neighborhood.
clear about that. Okay.
No.
But they're next to each other?
Yes.
Correct.
All right. I get it. It's okay. I would like to talk some more at some point about the Disability Center, because I don't want them, that was property that was sort of
Correct.
somehow left over from Village Place, and we rented it to them for a very good price, but I don't want to see them turned out. I want to, if there's a better place for them, that's fine, but I want us to preserve that at all costs, or to preserve a place that they can get a discounted fee.
Yeah, that's why we said we just need to look at it. We just need to understand
Right.
that. So that's down the road.
Yeah.
Right. So
How are they funded? How is the Disability Center funded?
I don't know. No, that's
Okay.
not, that's
All
under,
right.
under us.
Okay, that'd be good to find out. Okay, that's all I have right now.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. All right. So just a reminder, let's try to stick to the structure, budget, and staffing needs, because this particular issue, we need to make a motion to direct staff to convert the LHA staff members to employees of the city of Longmont. And then we unfortunately, I think as a board or as a commission body, we have a lot of ground to cover in the near future. Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I'm trying to stay almost close to income versus expenditures. But there was a little digression into the HUD relationship and the missing vouchers. And
Yeah.
so you're shaking your head. Is that too far afield? Because
Yeah, it's not missing vouchers. It's what's the program called, Kathy?
Which one? Sorry.
The program you go through with HUD to determine how many vouchers you have.
The Housing Choice Voucher Program?
Yeah, but there's
Yes.
there's a process they work you through. What is that
No,
called?
it's the
two-year
2-year
tool.
tool.
Yeah, 2-year tool.
Right. Okay. And so, but there was a question, and I've heard this figure many times before, or at least several times before, about 800 vouchers that are somehow not accounted for. What's the story with that?
Yeah, I think Kathy can address that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Longmont Housing Authority has had budget authority up to 509 vouchers for years and years and years. But as housing prices increase, rents increase, the budget authority and how many vouchers we can actually issue has decreased. So even though we have authority to go up to issue up to 509 vouchers, we don't have enough money to do that. So right now we're at like 420, I think. We are trying to determine and work through, as they have indicated, our numbers don't align with HUD's numbers. So we're trying to get those reconciled to see, do we have additional budget somewhere that we can issue some new vouchers, or are we capped at 420 right now? And can we apply for additional funding, kind of thing? So we're just trying to get a real handle on it, and haven't got a full reconciliation yet. But we have always had around 500. There have been, so I think where the 800 might be coming from is that several years ago, we did a survey of all the housing authorities and where all the vouchers were located. And there was probably 800 some in Longmont. Now, because we only have budget authority to, upper 4s to 5, that means at least 300 were coming from some other communities. And what we found was that a lot of Boulder County Housing Authority's vouchers were serving people in Longmont, and even some of Boulder Housing Partners vouchers were doing that in Longmont. So that might be where the 800 figure was coming from.
Yep.
We have to go back into the recording because I was pretty sure I heard it today. But we'll see. So in terms of the credit flow, I hear from people who say that they have an application in a pool for a voucher. And I hear from people who are holding a voucher and are afraid of losing it because they can't find a place that will accept it. Can you give just a 2-second overview of the flow of voucher credit? Like when something comes out of LHA's pool, does it happen because there is an apartment available, or is it some other triggering event that makes a voucher get assigned to a person?
Yeah. So we hold a wait list, I think is what you're referring to, that people, they apply and they get put on the wait list for the voucher program. And as we pull folks off of that wait list, they get, I think it's 60 days to find a unit. And if they cannot find something, we can get an extension up to another 30 days. Most people are able to find something within that 90-day period. I'm not exactly sure if we can give an additional extension or not, or if it's a hard and fast and then we go to the next person on the wait list. But that's basically it. When a voucher is available, then we pull off the wait list for whoever's next.
And does it relate at all to the openings in LHA properties or not?
No, the vouchers are separate. So the vouchers are the tenant based. So they align with the tenant. We do have vouchers that are attached to properties, but those are called project-based vouchers. And that is, it used to be on a separate wait list. We are now going to put them on the same wait list with the housing choice voucher, so that we'll go through that wait list more quickly as units are available in our properties as well.
So is there a wait list for properties in the LHA system? That's
separate. So there may be units. Yeah, maybe we could do a flow chart or something.
Yeah.
So there are the units that don't have a voucher, project-based voucher attached to them. We keep a wait list for that as well. So Fall River has 15 project-based vouchers, but they have 60 units. So whatever that is, 45 don't have a voucher attached. So we keep a wait list for any of those 45 units that come up as well.
So if I am holding a voucher, can I use my
If it's a tenant-based voucher, you can.
At one that doesn't have property-based?
Yes.
Okay.
So the one thing that I would love to add, and Olivia's on the call too, is that, so maybe what you're referring to, Commissioner Martin, is that we needed to clean up our our selection process and our wait list for our housing choice voucher program. And so, so Olivia and crew have, they have been working really hard over the past several weeks and months to really to clean up our housing choice voucher wait list. And so they, I am pleased to say that they basically sent out letters to, we had what, roughly 900 folks that were on still on the wait list for when we last opened it, which was in 2018, I believe. And so they sent out letters. They got that information back. There was roughly around 120 folks that sent their letters back, and so what Olivia has done is has put all of that information. So those are 120 households that are still actively interested in a voucher, and she entered all that information into our Yardi system, our database system, so that now we have current data in there. We have a way to pull those names, and so she and we had 2 people from our senior services staff that helped to support Olivia in cleaning up the housing choice voucher wait list, and we'll have some new structures and new processes put in place for when we open those. But now we're looking at 120 versus 900, if you will. So, and next she's going to hit the properties. And so, so that was one area that we really needed to clean up. And Olivia has done a fabulous job in doing that.
So the people that are no longer in the pool because they didn't return their question, did that mean they're just out of luck? Or have we established that they have found other housing? Or
I don't think we know what their situation is, so it's been 2.5, 3 years, since they would have signed up on that wait list. So who knows?
I hear from those people.
Who knows? But we're going to manage that process in much more of a real-time basis moving forward, so we don't get so behind.
All right, I'm gonna cut off this. This is great. These are all things we need to talk about. I agree. But right now, let's focus on structure, budget, and the staffing needed, and moving towards a motion to direct staff to convert the LHA staff members to employees of the city of Longmont. This is literally the second organizational meeting of getting going. Okay, Dr. Waters?
I move we direct staff to convert LHA staff to city employees.
Councilmember, all right, so we have a motion on the table from Commissioner Waters, seconded by Councilmember Martin, to direct staff to convert the LHA staff members to employees of the city of Longmont. Do we have anyone who disagrees with this? Perfect. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. All right, perfect. The motion passes unanimously. Harold, do you have anything else that you need to discuss regarding your staffing needs on that issue now that we voted?
Yeah, I do actually. I want to just catch you up on some things. So when you see the budget, there were some significant budget changes that we made. Probably the 2 most significant changes is there is not the budget for the executive director nor chief financial officer. I've talked to you all about this. The financial side has moved within the city. And so that's falling within our financial structure in Jim's office, with Jim in that capacity, and then Deanne to Kendra, and the accounting supervisor. We have 1 vacant account position we're filling, and then they were interviewing for the ARAP position. The reason why I'm bringing this out is because when we started really evaluating the structure and the positions that we had in place, what I saw with the previous chief financial officers is that they were doing a lot of accounting work, but then we also just didn't have enough bodies to do it, which I think when you look at the previous audits in the organization and you look at what we were seeing and what we talked about in terms of how things were being booked, we needed people who could just dig in and do the work. So that's why we eliminated the chief financial officer position and created the structure which you see in the IGA. Same thing on the chief executive or the executive director position. I think the salary on that position was somewhere in the neighborhood of $150,000. And so what we did is we really took that out of the budget so that we could fund the regional property manager, do the benchmarking we need for the other positions, and to ensure that we actually had the staff in place to carry out what we needed to do on a regular basis. Because what we were seeing is in that structure, they could just not keep up with it. And it wasn't really putting people, as I like to say, where the rubber meets the road. So that's what's embedded in all of these budgets, which is then when you looked at the IGA and how that worked out, and you all put me in that position as the interim executive director, that's connected to that piece of the puzzle. And that's why you see Kathy and Karen and jumping in, because we're really in different ways filling different functions within this piece. Now, as we continue to go over time, one of the things that I've talked about and that we've talked about is I also have to get Karen back into her world more, and so we're going to continue to evolve in this. She will always be part of this, but I need Karen to really work within her world as the city side and help us as we continue to look forward there. And then when we look in the structure of this, Kathy will really jump into the HCV side. And then on the executive director side, I'm going to have even more engagement with Lisa and the property managers and those folks, as well as with Kathy on the HCV, as we continue to look in the future on these positions. And so we're going to continue evolving in this. But right now, from a budget perspective, we just don't have the revenue to bring in. One of the org charts we showed you originally was an assistant director position. It's just not there yet. And that's going to tie into the development work that we have to do. So we're going to continue to evolve in this process as we move forward. In terms of the position, you all have made the direction to move them and bring them over as city staff. There's still a lot of work that we have to do with this. And so it's going to take us some time to really officially bring this together. We have to work through essentially the personnel policies, the onboarding associated with that. One of the most significant issues that we have to deal with, and Jim's working on this, is the retirement plan issues that come into play. Reconciling benefits and cost. So we provide health, dental, vision, employee assistance. And I don't know if Councilmember or Commissioner Pack, did you have a question? Oh, okay, sorry. So we provide that. The Housing Authority provides dental and health insurance only. We've run the preliminary numbers on that, and because it's a small organization in the state plan, the insurance is actually, the cost of the insurance is actually based on age. So as Kendra and I have run the first run on this, it looks like it'll be slightly less expensive in our system, but we have to continue going through those details. But the big piece is really the retirement component of this, and that's going to take a lot of work. So while you've given us direction, I just want you all to know that's going to take now more time for us to move through. That's it on this item, I think.
All right. And then Harold, at this time, do we want to, let's just move on to 5C quickly.
Let me make sure I didn't miss anything from Karen and Kathy. Karen
Okay.
and Kathy, did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
I think you're good.
All right.
All right. So that said, let's quickly, before we go on to the compensation approach, it sounds like you are looking for our permission, or do you want a permission to explore or permission to lease the LHA administrative offices?
So let me talk about that a little bit. I want to give you some overview on this as well, if I can. So because this ties into the operational conversation, if you want to move on to 5C. Is that what you wanted to do, Mayor or Chairperson? Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, so essentially, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is I know it's 3:20, and I'm just trying to be mindful of our time. And unlike council meeting at 4 o'clock, I'm gone. You know, so I mean, these are just administrative, just preliminary issues. I don't think we need to really dig into the question is, I mean, it's pretty obvious. We have some offices we're not using. The veterans community wants to use them, and it makes financial sense.
Correct.
Right? So if you want to give a brief overview of that and then ask for a motion, we can do that.
So for me, the one piece, obviously, I need to get the staff in those offices closer to us here in the organization, because that's hard as people are moving back and forth. The reason why the Veterans Community Project made sense in this case, and it was by default that I heard that they needed property and they lost their property. The big difference in this is that they have experience managing properties in other facilities. And while they will not take on the units, they have the experience of being the conduit for us with the individuals in those units, and can help us eyes and ears on the ground and be the interface for the people that are in the units, versus a group that doesn't necessarily have that experience. And so for me, that's why that opportunity really made a lot of sense. And then they're obviously on the ground now working with homeless veterans. I know that Commissioner Peck actually engaged with them based on the contact she had. And so there's a lot of affinities in this, which is why I'm making this recommendation for the Veterans Community Project.
All right. So do we have a motion from someone? Councilmember Christensen?
I move that we lease LHA administrative offices to the Veterans Community Project, or lease some space. We're not leasing the whole thing, right?
Right.
Anyway, I move that we do.
Second.
I would like to discuss it.
It's been moved by Councilmember Christensen and seconded by Councilmember Peck that the city of Longmont lease the LHA administrative offices to the Veterans Community Project. Do we have anyone who opposes the motion to begin with? All right, no one opposes the motion. I know, so I don't know what discussion we need, but Councilmember Christensen, if you'd like to make a comment.
Are we leasing all of that administrative space, or is some of it going to be for contact for the people who will live in Briarwood? And would that be a potential place for the Disability Center to move if we want that?
So I think we would have some structural issues for the Disability Center there. I think it's better over in the other location. And again, I haven't gone any further with VCP other than the idea. I needed to get you all to say yes. Now we're going to get into the conversation on the details of the contract, and that they will be the conduit for us to the residents there. We'll still engage with maintenance and our property managers, but day to day, they will be there to help us.
All right, let's go ahead and vote. All in favor of leasing the LHA administrative offices to the Veterans Community Project, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. All right, the motion passes and carries unanimously. All right, let's go on to the review and approve. Let's go ahead and talk about the proposed compensation approach for the city staff working on the LHA business, please.
It's a mayor council. Joanne couldn't be here today. So when we started moving through this, you all may remember that you all talked about this in terms of the staff that was going to do the work. We also had, and Commissioner DeBee's on here, we also had the Housing Authority Board at that time talking about this, and also recognizing the fact of the work that we were doing, and the fact that the Housing Authority needed to absorb the cost associated with that. One of the challenges that we had going into this, you may remember that we talked about, and I think the number at that point is we thought we had about 192,000 in savings. I'm saying approximately 175, because that's, as we made all of the accounting adjustments, you can see that. But then as we got to the end of the budget year for 2020, that number is closer to 300,000. And that's also because they received a PPP loan that's forgivable. So that's included in the amount of money that they have available for 2020 that they're carrying over. As we also look at the budget and we're moving forward, we think there's approximately 100,000 available for ongoing compensation issues in there. Based on the work that we've done this week, we know there's going to be some other revenue sources that will be available based on your direction on the property. That's also going to add some additional revenue in the mix in terms of the ongoing expenses associated with the work that we're doing as the city. As you all know, as part of the IGA, you also authorized the $300,000 to go over on the accounting side. And so that has been built into the budget. You authorized funding in this, and I say you, the commission, it was the previous group, not you all, but you agreed to it on the council side. The position associated with the network position on the IT side based on the work that we're doing, all of that's already included in the budget. So what we're really talking about are those services that haven't been specifically delineated and funded in the IGA. So even as recent as the last board meeting, I think it was advisory board member Arlene Zortman, is it Zortman? Brought this question up. And the reason we haven't brought this to you more quickly is because A, we needed to understand the financial position. B, we needed to understand the structure, and we really didn't have a model for this. The compensation within the city was based on something different. So I asked Chief Human Resource Officer Joanne Zias to put together a model for this. And the reason why it's so different is our compensation system has been built on interim assignments within like operating groups and exceptional performance. We have no system in our structure that really talks about mergers and acquisitions, and that's what this is essentially a merger and acquisition. So Joanne put together the options that you all see in the information packet. But generally, at a high level, what it's saying is for those staff who are required to take on a primary role, consistently more than 1 day a week for a period of at least 6 months. And you're seeing who's done that in this case. And you can see Kathy, Karen, Kendra, and there's some other folks in this category, but we have to really dig into it because there's some other nuances associated with COVID in terms of where they fall. Joanne's recommended that the temporary stipend equal to 20% of salary. Part of this is looking in arrears based on the work that they've done over the last 6 to 7 months. If you have a staff member who's taking a moderate role, consistently more than 1/2 day per week of additional work above a full-time job that exceeds 40 hours, that's within the 10% salary increase. And that's consistent with what we have in our existing policy for the interim roles. So for example, if council member or if Commissioner Christensen is in a job and we have a vacancy and we ask them to fill that role, we do that 10% increase as part of our processes. And then for those staff that really don't fit in those categories, we would address that through our exceptional performance pay. And we have done that for a number of individuals as part of our exceptional performance pay in 2020. Based on the work that they've done. So the staff that we had from our ETS department, staff that we've had in finance department, they have received exceptional pay in our system associated with this. And so you can see where we are on a one-time, and the reason the number is probably lower is because many individuals have already received exceptional pay. This is for those individuals that haven't. And so before I move forward on this, and this is really about the HUD piece that we're answering to, is I need you all to direct us as whether or not to proceed with this approach.
Councilmember Waters.
I move we approve the model that's described in the enclosure proposed by the city's HR director, and we include the interim director with the other staff members who have been identified, who have been committing their time to this transition.
Second.
All right, there's a motion. You're talking about Harold, correct?
That would be the interim executive.
I just want to. I want to make darn sure that everybody who's listening and watching understands.
That's the guy.
We are going to.
One.
So the motion is to adopt the proposal for compensation of Longmont City staff, but also including the interim executive director, Harold Dominguez.
Correct.
Okay,
correct.
It was moved by Councilmember Waters and seconded by Councilmember Christensen. All in favor, say aye. Actually, anyone opposed to this motion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right, great. Let's move on to 5. Can we take a 2-minute break? It's been an hour and a half. Let's just use the restroom, come back in 4 or 5 minutes. Sound good? Anybody opposed? All right, great. I see Susie Hidalgo Faring's like, I'm used to a 60-minute schedule. I need it.
I need it.
Yeah, I do too. All right, cool. Be back in a second. Thanks, guys.
Harold, did you get some more coffee?
I got water, actually.
Good.
I can feel my legs now starting to twitch. So I was like,
We need to make you a little care package for. Oh, how's your mom?
she's doing well, actually.
Good.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you. I'll tell you later.
Yeah, okay. And we're not in public.
Yeah, but no, she's doing really well. She she has both of her vaccines, and so
Oh, good. Good.
and so that has provided a tremendous amount of relief for me. Because she's 90, and she turns 90 this year, and you just, it's hard enough for me keeping her on. Yeah, I know Susan. She likes to do a lot of work around the house and stuff. So, but yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to think of your parents differently.
Yeah, she's better now. Even when she was in her late 70s, it was not uncommon to either hear her say that she had gotten on the roof to do something or get a call from a family member going, you need to talk to her, because we saw her on the roof.
Yeah, my mother tried to make my father stay off the roof after he hit 85, but he would just wait until she went down to the store and then he'd be up.
Yeah.
Harold, while you're here, I have a question about the vouchers. The vouchers that you pay for from HUD, are they different than the vouchers that you get from the COVID subsidy that you can, or is that money from the COVID subsidy just money that you're using to buy more vouchers? I'm confused on how you're getting vouchers through that.
So the HUD money and the HUD dollars that you see for vouchers in that one line item is specifically the traditional voucher piece.
Right.
The money that you see associated with CARES, that's, and I think you're talking about the grants that we received. And I don't know if Karen's on, but the grants that we received as part of that bridge housing.
Yes.
That's CARES money that we're treating as a voucher. Is that the right way to say it, Kathy?
Yeah, I think it's more providing rent assistance as opposed to a
Right.
true voucher.
Yeah, it's rent assistance.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that distinction. I was a bit confused about the terminology.
Yeah.
Well, there's vouchers all over the place. That's the thing that I've learned, because you also have state state vouchers that come into play on properties. So think of the suites and the vouchers for mental health partners, but that's through the state.
Very confusing.
Yeah.
Good job, Kathy, keeping it all straight.
I'm not sure what we're talking about, but I'm glad I missed it. And that's awesome. All right, let's go on to the voluntary compliance agreement update.
Hey, Mayor, real quick, I do need
Yeah.
to clarify. A, I thank you for the motion. B, the numbers on that, on the fiscal impact, are different because the fiscal impact numbers I included were for the staff that reported to me. So it's going to change a little. It's going to change based on your motion. I just wanted you all to know that.
Okay, thank you.
Because I just brought it for them.
Yep, and now you'll bring it back for you.
Gotcha.
Because we've directed you to do so, and you do what we say, right, Harold?
Yep.
All right. Okay. Good. Voluntary compliance agreement update.
So that's me. So some of you may or may not know that back in 2018, whenever it was that this was signed, 2019, the Longmont Housing Authority was monitored by HUD specifically around fair housing and accessibility, and was found lacking, to put it mildly, I guess. So what HUD does, the Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity Division of HUD, what they do is that they summarize where you are lacking and then work with you on a plan to get into compliance, and is called the Voluntary Compliance Agreement. I have to say, so far they have been very, very, very understanding of what we can and can't get done, given what has gone on with the Housing Authority and the era of COVID, when we can't really get into units to do inspections and that kind of thing. Basically, what they found was a couple of things. There was denial of a reasonable accommodation for some folks to convert their tubs to showers. And so that was remedied by repaying the folks who were denied their reasonable accommodation, and that has been completed. The next big area is around fair housing training for staff, and we have been addressing that as staff has come on by finding different trainings that's acceptable to HUD within the time period that we're allowed, which I think is within 6 months of when they come on board. So we are now in compliance with that. The big area that they found us out of compliance with was that our properties, while they meet ADA compliant code standards, that's required by our building code, they do not meet the more stringent UFAS, which is Uniform Federal Accessibility Standards, which is a stronger standard. And this is a requirement that when you get HUD funding or put HUD funding into a property, that they need to meet the stronger UFAS standards. Now, when we were in the VCA, the Voluntary Compliance Agreement negotiations, HUD admitted that hardly any community meets these standards. Most communities don't even know about these standards, that they have not done a good job of making them well known to communities or providing any kind of guidance on them, but nevertheless, we have to comply. And it is things as small as, just to give you an example, a toilet has to be mounted exactly 18 inches from the closest sidewall. The center line of the toilet in one of our properties was mounted 17.5 inches from the closest sidewall, so half an inch. Things like that. The grab bar has to be mounted 6 inches from the sidewall, and one was mounted 6.5 inches. Some of them are easy changes, and we could move that grab bar and be compliant there, but moving the toilet might be a bigger issue. So for instance, in Fall River, if it was off center there, we've got radiant heating on the flooring. That would ruin the radiant heating to move that. So some things can be corrected, some things can't. So what we have to do is go through all of our facilities, all of our residential units, all the common areas in every property, our commercial buildings, including the main office, and do an analysis of what is off. So HUD, when they did the report, they selected a couple of units. We have to go through every unit in every common area to make sure all of the UFAS standards are met, where we're lacking, and then prepare a plan for what we can correct and what we can't correct. And then we will meet with HUD and determine, what do we do? It might be, if we can't correct something in an ADA compliant to make an ADA compliant unit UFAS compliant, that we, in our next project, we have to do 2 UFAS compliant units. So there's a way, there's some workaround that we can do, short of tearing out everything and renovating everything. Some of the things like the slope of a handicapped parking space, we might not be able to correct until we get to the point where we're going to do the entire parking lot. So for the Aspen Meadows Senior Apartments renovation, because we were doing that anyway, we have added 7 UFAS compliant units. So we will at least have 7 units there when we're done. And we are totally renovating that parking lot to correct slope considerations in that. So it is a costly and major renovation. It's more than what we would have normally spent, but at least in this way, we get to, it all becomes part of the tax credit process for that particular project. So we'll be working through that this year. That's the biggest area that we're not compliant with, is having that analysis and the plan, and then what we're going to do about it. Commissioner Peck, did you have something? Sorry. Commissioner or Chairperson Bagley.
No, yeah, I was just gonna, I did, but then you actually responded, because my question was simply, what happens if we can't? What happened? But you said that you're going to report, analyze, make 2 lists, one we can fix, one we can't, go back to HUD and deal with them about what we can do. And you even provided a couple solutions of providing, additional, units that are accessible, compliant, ADA compliant. So you answered my question. So I went, yeah, so you did great. So, all right. Is there anything else, Kathy?
Yeah, there's another section. I didn't know if Commissioner Peck had a question before I moved on to the next section.
Go ahead.
I do. Kathy, what happens if you cannot come up to the HUD standards? Do they withhold funding, or are we fined? How does that work?
So I think what will happen is there are going to be areas in our property that we can't have enough UFAS compliant units in them. So it's the same percentage. So 5% of units have to be ADA compliant. We meet that by code. So we're okay with our building code, but there may not meet UFAS, and we may not be able to do anything for a long time. So what I think HUD will do is say, in the next project that you develop, instead of putting in 5%, you need to put in 15% UFAS. Okay. Then we would be compliant overall, the whole portfolio. is what I'm anticipating. So the next several development projects that we get into, we're probably going to be doing above and beyond. And that way then portfolio wide, we're compliant.
Great. Okay, thanks.
So the other area that we were out of compliance with were some of our policies and procedures. So we have done policy updates, and these are all completed and approved by HUD for physical alterations and for our reasonable accommodation process, and effective communication so that we translate things and can provide communications in other ways. The 504 notice needs to go on a whole bunch of different documents that we do. So we're getting in compliant with that. The transfer policy. So if somebody wants to transfer from one unit to another, that's not a reasonable accommodation, that we now have a policy for that. Assistance animals, we have a policy around that now. And then we have put into place a lease addendum for people who are in the ADA compliant units but might not need it. So we are not required to hold those ADA units open until somebody with a reasonable accommodation or a need goes in there. We can put another eligible person or family in there, but they have to acknowledge, and we have to tell them that if somebody needs to go into that unit that does have a reasonable accommodation, they need to move into another unit that's comparable. So we're working to put all of that into place. So all of those policies have been approved by HUD. The only thing we have to do now is put them all out to the residents and to new applicants so that they know about it, put it on our website, and get all that to HUD by April 15th. So we're in the process of doing that. We're still working on the things we still have to do is we're still working on the grievance policy that is to HUD for their review. And then we have to put together a list of accessible housing in Longmont. And that is really compiling a list of rental apartments that meet ADA requirements as well. We don't have to know if they're vacant or not, or available or not, just really, I'll have to get with Joni. It's really what they said was kind of a listing of the last several years of the buildings that have been built that we know have accessible apartments within them. So that is one thing we need to work on still. That, and then getting that whole analysis done. So it's a lot, but I think it is something that we're gonna get done. We're keep plugging at it. This summer, we're gonna try and get in, hopefully if COVID is lifted, at least to the extent where we can go into units and not freak our residents out by having people come in and look at their units for accessibility and be in their properties as well, so.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Kathy. All right, let's move on to the update on future development opportunities.
All right, I think that's me too, to start out anyway. So when we started taking over the operations of the Housing Authority, and as Harold indicated, the Housing Development Corporation was ready to just call it quits. They didn't see an opportunity for development for a while. We didn't see an opportunity for development for a while, except for the Element property that did come in during all of this. And actually, when Jillian was still here, had approached us for participating and being a partner, the Housing Authority being a partner in that development. So other than that particular development, we weren't really looking for anything. We have had some opportunities come up. I think they're worth exploring. They would be not us being the developer, but being in partnership, kind of like the Element project where someone else is actually the developer, but we come in and we provide tax relief or property management in particular is what we're interested in. Now that we have good property management people and staff and policies in place, because we can charge a fee for that, and that can be a source of income that we provide for properties. So the other thing that, as you know, the Housing Authority owns the land on Sunset that surrounds the suites. There's other room for other developments on it. They also own a 2 or 4 acre parcel on Hover over in 18th, right across from Hearthstone and Lodge. So there's possibilities there. And then also as we get more in line, more have processes more in place and cleanup in place and kind of have a better handle on where we're going, being a partner in some of the inclusionary housing developments that come forward is something that we're also really looking forward to as well. So I don't know, Harold, if you want me to go in more detail on a couple of the developments we've been talking about, or if vague is still good.
Yeah, I can jump in on some of this. So for example, on the Element property, what we're going to see within our organization is, and Joni's on the line, so I'm going to slide in with Kathy and Element on the development side. Joni's going to slide into what is the traditional city manager role if there's development conversations, because we're going to wall ourselves off for any number of reasons. We're also the Chrisman development, which was a partnership with the Housing Authority before North Main behind Sonic in that development. We're actually engaging in conversations again. Prior to us becoming involved, we think they were interested in doing more affordable development, and timing just didn't work based on where we were. So we're now re-engaging in that conversation with them and looking at that project. Obviously, the land that you all purchased, the 9 acres associated with Costco, we're starting to think about that piece. What I wanted to say, and you heard me talk about in the budget development and how that revenue comes in. Development is incredibly important for housing authorities in terms of their ongoing budgeting, because that's what brings dollars into the structure. And that's what's happening now with the resyndication of Fall River and the work that we've done on the revitalization there. There's revenue that's coming out of that project into the housing authority to use. We know we have that coming on Village Place in about 3 years, I believe. Is it 3 years, Kathy?
Mm-hmm.
So that's in place. So development's important in the mix and how we budget to ensure that we're continuing to bring revenue into the system. It also puts affordable housing into the system, and then it creates ongoing funding in terms of the management fees. So on the Element project that Kathy talked about, she may have said this, we said we want to be the managers of this project, the operating managers of this property, because of that connection. What that does is create more capacity on the affordable housing side.
And I would add, by partnering, we don't have to do everything.
Right.
We don't have to do all of the grant writing and all that kind of stuff. But like, I was looking back at the Chrisman 1 deal, there was a, we did get some of the development fee by doing certain things, by project basing vouchers and by providing the tax exemption, et cetera. So, and actually paying, there's a payment in lieu of taxes to the school district for that project, because we felt that the school district was going to be impacted, since it's families that are living there, that they should get the taxes for that. So we do that for them.
All right, Councilmember Peck.
Can you remind me of the address of the Element property? Where is that?
2000 Sunset Way. So it's right next to the suites, on the same
Right.
property
It's
as the
the same
suites.
property on the suites that you all purchased. So
okay, good.
Connecting dots, when we had the issue in Fall River that we needed to deal with to move it forward, and you all agreed to purchase the property at the suites, it's that area around the suites that we're talking about. So this is one that's interesting now, because the city, when you purchased it, was the majority owner of the property, and we had ultimate say in the development. But now it's all one and the same. So that's the location.
Okay. All right. Any other development opportunities of which you want to make us aware, Harold? Kathy?
I think we've covered them all.
All right. And then let's go on to the interim executive director's report. Is there anything that
Yeah, so a couple of things I want
ahead.
to talk about. So I mentioned to you all earlier about the security system at Village Place. And so as we talk about this, you all as the board will be called on by people who live in in the housing authority properties, and you all will be asked questions. So we're going to, as I was thinking through it, we're going to work on a different communication tool for you all in terms of here's what's going on. The reason I say this, you may have received emails. I received emails about a break-in at Village Place, and we've been having issues there, and so we were waiting on the city side to get the security contract completed so we could take advantage of that bid. That was completed. We did. We've met with them. They've given us a proposal for a broader security system there, and what we're talking about: cameras, security system in the office, alerts on the doors if they're left open. We're getting ready to move forward on that project. We're still waiting on authorization from Chaffa. And Kathy, I may need you or Kendra to nod yes or no. It's either, I think it's Chaffa, maybe DOLA, because they have to authorize the use of the reserve fund in this to pay for that. And then we, not this year, but next year, we'll have to include the operating expense on the security system into our ongoing budget. At the same time, we're also looking at the same type of system for Aspen Meadows Rehab, and that can actually be worked into that project. But we're also at this time really focusing on, when we go through this process, putting the same systems in place so that it's consistent across all properties instead of having different systems. And so that's a lot of work that we're going on, but I wanted to specifically point that out to you all in case you get contacted. We are moving on this.
We're getting security systems.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. What else?
Second piece, in case you have snow removal questions, the city has actually come in via our golf staff that can't work when it snows, and our recreation staff, and they're assisting our maintenance staff in clearing snow at the properties. Again, that's in case you get called, because those are calls that I've also had. And so I've checked the facilities a couple times. They've done a really good job in terms of moving through and getting that work done. You may have heard, I think we sent an email to you all a week ago in terms of the pipe that broke at the suites. Everyone is now in the facility, and Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, Lisa and Corinne are really doing a fabulous job on getting that together. We did have to move someone into a vacant unit right now until theirs gets completed, because there was a fair amount of damage in that. But compared to what we had at the lodge in Hearthstone when we had a sprinkler system issue, the time frame is much more condensed than when we got everyone back in the properties. I think those are the major updates. Chairperson Bagley, we can slip into Lisa on the vacancy report, and she can give you any updates if that's okay.
All right, Lisa, what you got for us?
Well, just to back up a few things that Harold said, I did talk to Chaffa about Village Place today, and they gave us the green light. I sent you an email earlier, Harold. Okay. And then for Miss Dunn over at the Suites, she is in a temporary unit, and we expect her to be in there for about 3 weeks. And then,
cool. Thank you.
So occupancy, we're sitting about 93.5% occupied throughout all LHA properties combined. I believe you guys were provided a list of the vacancies currently. At a few of our properties, I'm not going to go into too many details, but we have extinguished all our current waiting list, and we have advertised the waiting list will open for Village Place, Fall River, and Spring Creek on March 5th. So once we get those waiting lists updated, then we can start filling some of those vacancies. The Suites, we've made some great progress since I came aboard. When I started, we had about 10 vacancies. We're currently down to 6. Out of those 6, I believe 3 now are rented as of this morning. Village Place, who had 3 vacancies, they're now down to 2 vacancies. And Aspen Meadows Senior, who does also have 6 vacancies. One of those is we're using as a temporary office while our office goes through a remodel with the resyndication. And 5 units are empty, but they're in some type of being turned, renovations or something. And so those we are trying to pre-lease off of our waiting list.
All right. Anything else? Council member, I don't know who got their hand up first, but let's go with Councilmember Martin, because I've called on Dr. Waters a couple of times first already. So let's go with Councilmember Martin, then Councilmember Waters.
Yeah, where do we find the vacancy list and how often is it maintained? Because people ask.
I'm not sure if this one was provided to you. Kathy, I think I emailed it to her and she was going to try to get it out to you guys.
Is it posted publicly anywhere?
Dawn provided it to y'all and part of the packet, so it was updated, so it is part of the public record here. And it will be provided to you as part of every month's meeting, so that'll be available to the public as well in the packet.
That'll be
And
great. Go ahead.
And I think it's also how is the wait list being advertised?
How's the wait list being
Is
advertised?
that what you're asking for,
No, I think
Commissioner Martin?
I think that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So Olivia, so I think we are so we send that out to all of our networks. So, so to senior services and to all of our networks, we also advertise that on our website that it will be opening. So we try to get the word out and far and wide that that the wait list is going to be opening and for what properties.
So is there an easy way to search for it? Because I often find that it's on the website, but it's not easy to find things in general.
Under announcements.
Yeah, if you just
On
click
the
on the
LHA.
announcements, it's right there. Yep.
And we might need to that point, we might need to think about changing the tab to say wait list opening or do something on the website where it's easier, because I think that's part of, we've had it on our own website where those issues, and so I'll work with them on that.
All right, Councilmember Waters.
Thanks, Chairman Bagley. Lisa, we used to, with a housing authority hat on before we made this transition, 97% occupancy rate was kind of the benchmark, or the indicator that we were on track through the year in terms of revenue generation. And as I looked at the numbers and some of what you just shared, and like, okay, those 5 units at Aspen Meadows, if you take those out of the mix because they're under rehab, we still aren't quite at 97%. Is that number going to still be relevant given the transition that's occurred? Is that still the number we ought to keep in mind when we look at that vacancy report?
That is my goal. I think right now that we have managers in place at these sites again, where we've had some temporary managers, part-time managers, now that we have full-time bodies at all of these properties, I think we will be able to obtain these quite quickly over the next 30 to 60 days and maintain that, because now we will have people in place to be calling the wait list as soon as we get a notice and not waiting.
So you're going to continue to use that as kind of the benchmark. So we should as well. Very good. Thanks.
The other thing on this that comes into play, and I'll use the suites as an example, where we have mental health partners that have part of the vouchers. And what we've learned is the process of filling those is even more complicated, in that how it goes through the state and what we have to do. Karen's actually engaging in a conversation. I was part of a meeting with mental health partners where the state said, hey, if you can design a different plan that'll allow you to more quickly do this, we're willing to look on that. So she's working on that now to also streamline that piece of filling units that are associated with other vouchers.
Karen and Lisa.
Sorry.
Karen and Lisa, yes.
Yep. Councilmember Christensen. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Christensen. Was that a white glove you just had on?
Oh, I'm just a white person.
There you go, cleaning. Look out.
It's in the sunshine. I wanted to thank you, Lisa, if you were the one who did the vacancy chart, because it's the first time I've actually seen at the bottom an explanation of why these are vacant and not. That's very helpful. And even when I looked at it earlier today, there were still 6 vacancies at the suites, and now it's down to 3. So I think we're definitely headed in the right direction. But it does help to know that the vacancies at the Aspen Meadows are because of the renovation and things like that. So thank you. All those things, those details are extremely helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Anything else, Harold, from the vacancy report? All right, great. And let's go on to commissioner comments and reports. Anybody want to say anything that hasn't been said already? All right. I guess the only thing I would say is that, yeah, this will, we'll just roll with this until we all figure it out. But the one thing I guess something to think about, it just now dawned on me when you said it. I mean, I'm more than willing to talk to constituents, but starting to field LHA complaints from our residents, maybe we could come up with a process to funnel those complaints, because I don't want to be dealing with a dozen complaints every day, because I just don't have the time, and then people are going to get upset with us.
No, and
So-
they need, to that
So-
point, they need to come to us too because of all of the HUD issues that are in play. And so, yeah,
So
we'll
maybe-
work on a process.
Yeah, if you think of a process, because I just don't have the time to be a full-time LHA chair in that capacity. So, cool. All right. Seeing no additional comments or questions. Oh, sorry, Councilmember Christensen waving the sunlit glove.
Yeah, see, now I look totally. I think it really, we do need to filter it through the staff, through Harold and the staff, because we don't want people getting 5 fairly or 6, 7 not properly informed comments. We want it to go through the staff who is really on top of what's going on right now, through Lisa and Harold and Karen and and Olivia. Anyway, okay.
Yep, I agree. Thank you, Polly. Commissioner Martin.
Yeah, until there is a published process, is there a point person that we can route constituents to or route the requests to? Either one.
So I would say include Lisa, Kathy, Karen, and me, so that we're all just if you send an email, just put our names on it. That way it's just hitting our radars, because depending on the nature of it, Lisa can handle, and Lisa has been handling the majority of them, but depending on severity, and we do a really good job of getting it, but if you'll just put us in the carbon line, the CC line, we're good.
I've just been giving them Susie's personal cell number and saying she'll handle it. Yeah, can we go ahead and put up that number for Susie again one more time, Dawn? No, just kidding. All right, so thank you. That was my only concern. All right, and then when is the next special meeting? Are you going to tell us, or do we have it on our agenda? Or do we have it on the schedule?
We're going to be working with you all on scheduling that in, and
Okay.
so
All right, we've
because
already
we want-
covered that then.
Yeah, this was one that we just needed to catch you up on, especially the voluntary compliance agreement and
All right.
what we were doing in some of these issues, and we'll bring that in. Jim did pull the balance sheets, but we need to do some work so you know what they're associated with, and so you'll be getting those next week.
All right. Well, I'm sorry that we're at 4:09. I tried to push this as hard as we could, end by 4, but I'll take 4:09 over 5:09. So do we have a motion to adjourn? Dr. Waters. Oh, Councilmember Martin has moved to adjourn. Dr. Waters threw up his hand as a second, I presume. Yes. Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The motion carries unanimously. The meeting is adjourned. See you guys soon. Bye.